The First Amendment. It's been an American right since 1791. But what does the First Amendment actually mean?
What do you think the First Amendment gives you the right to?
I don't know.
What do you think the First Amendment means? Like, what rights do the First Amendment give you?
Freedom of speech, expression.
What rights do the First Amendment give you?
Freedom of speech. Of speech and like expression.
It allows you to express your opinion freely without being like in trouble.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure freedom of speech.
What do you think the First Amendment means?
I don't know.
Alright, so the First Amendment is actually your right to a bunch of stuff, including freedom of a religion, right to assemble, freedom of the press, and freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is obviously really important to high schoolers, so how do high schoolers interpret freedom of speech? Well, according to a New York Times article by Niraj Chokshi, high school support for freedom of speech is rising. However, the same article claims that high schoolers only support freedom of speech for certain types of speech. So I, Rachel Frank, local defender of human rights and a big fan of talking about whatever the flipping heck I want to,
Why don't you just shut up?
set out on a mission to figure out what types of freedom of speech high schoolers actually support. I set out to protect the First Amendment, the Declaration of Independence, and America. I set out to save the world. Okay, so according to Niraj Chokshi, 91% of high schoolers support the right to voice unpopular opinions, but only 45% support the right to public offensive speech. Similarly, 43% support the right to offensive speech online. Even less high schoolers support the right to bullying speech, with 36% supporting the public right to bully and 30% supporting the online right to bully. Can that really be true?
Well, I don't know.
If we lined up 10 Newfield High School students, would half of them support a person's right to say varying offensive things like, Hitler missed one, I just don't think it's fair to straight couples if gay people can marry, and the Confederate flag is a non-racist part of history? Okay, poor examples. But the point still stands. Is the proportion of students who support different forms of free speech, such as unpopular opinions, offensive speech in public, offensive speech on social media, bullying speech in public, and bullying speech on social media equal to 0.91, 0.45, 0.43, 0.36, and 0.3 respectively? Are these stats accurate? Or is my alternate hypothesis the proportion of students who support different forms of free speech, such as unpopular opinions, offensive speech in public, offensive speech on social media, bullying speech in public, and bullying speech on social media, is not equal to 0.91, 0.45, 0.43, 0.36, and 0.3 respectively, more accurate? To find out, I spent several minutes administrating anonymous homeroom surveys and then several hours compiling the data into Excel to see how many people support the different forms of free speech. Instead of using a sample, I simply used all of my data, calculating results that are likely fairly representative of most similar rural schools. And at the end of the several days, I had my results. Fail to reject. Fail to reject? What do you mean fail to reject? Well, I guess Niraj Chokshi was actually right the whole time. Let's compare the results. Chokshi reported that 30% of high schoolers support the right to bullying speech online. Well, I found out that 24% of Newfield High School students feel the same. That's only a 6% difference. According to Chokshi, 36% of high schoolers support the right to bullying speech in public, and 26% of Newfield High School students feel the same. That's a difference of about 17 people. But now let's talk about offensive speech, where the gap gets even narrower. Chokshi reports that 43% of high schoolers support the right to offensive speech online. I found out that 38% of the students I surveyed felt the same. That's around a 10-person difference. Chokshi also reports that 45% of those he surveyed supported the right to public offensive speech. I found out that over 44% of Newfield High School students support the right to public offensive speech. Crazy, right? Here's where it gets even crazier. According to Chokshi, 91% of high school students support the right to voice unpopular opinions. My results showed that 91% of Newfield High School students support the right to voice unpopular opinions. Eerily similar. In conclusion, Chokshi was right. My chi-square hypothesis test showed that overall, my null hypothesis is the proportion of students who support different forms of free speech, such as unpopular opinions, offensive speech in public, offensive speech on social media, bullying speech in public, and bullying speech on social media, is equal to 0.91, 0.45, 0.43, 0.36, and 0.3 respectively, was unrejectable. Chomsky's percentages backed up nearly perfectly on occasion. So in the end,
My hypothesis was not disproved.
I now know that 91% of you are okay with me talking about whatever I want in class every day.
Why don't you just shut up?
So you better be glad I'm not coming back next year, or else I would use this against everyone anytime someone told me to shut up. Next time on Rachel Frank Saves the World.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.